Hello and welcome to the only show where the only time we're wasting is our own. I'm Matt.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Max.
And this is Force for Thought.
Episodes 1 and 2 of Ahsoka have dropped as of tonight. We just watched them, haven't discussed it at all, hopped right over to the table to start recording. Max, initial thoughts? What do you think? It's been about 1 minute since we've seen it.
10 out of 10.
Matt?
Yeah, absolutely 10 out of 10. Very excited.
I also was going to give it a 10 out of 10. That is great that we're all in agreement, so we won't have any disagreements, but it's not just that it was really, really good and it's everything that I expected it to be. There's so much that I didn't expect it to be, which I was expecting the unexpected, but there is so much that was like backstory between Sabine and Ahsoka that wasn't in Rebels or explained in anything else before, that I was like expecting to go into this show, having seen all of Clone Wars and all of Rebels and read the books and comics, like I was going to know enough to get through without too many questions. But no, the creators just decided that they're going to level the playing field for the people that have seen everything and the people that have seen nothing and say, you don't know any of the backstory, anyone.
I know, it's so good. I mean, even before we even jump into that, I mean, I can't believe we just watched Ahsoka, the first 2 episodes. I feel like it's been such a long time coming and we actually just watched it. Like, I just feel like that hype was so, I mean, like, as of like 2 hours ago, we were incredibly thrilled just sitting here just like waiting for the show to actually start and premiere and go in. And then it's even better than I thought, because we knew nothing from the trailer for the storyline. We knew nothing at all. We don't know where they ended up after Rebels. Again, we have like that afterlude scene in Rebels, but like we knew literally nothing. And now, like you just said, they level the playing field for people who can jump in, like friend of the pod Sway can jump in and understand these characters hopefully within a first couple episodes, just with what we watched, or like all of us, we caught a million little nuggets that they kind of gave out to us, and obviously we geeked out about like all of them. And then the fake out in the first episode as well. I mean, we can get to it, but when Sabine, you think is going to go for the helmet, you think is probably going to go for her blasters and jetpack, she goes for the lightsaber instead. Yeah. There's so many moments like that. They're so good.
That was a good fake out. And to be clear, I think the biggest thing that we're talking about as far as backstory that we didn't know going into it was Ahsoka training Sabine as her Padawan. And apparently that didn't go so well is what they're hinting at. We haven't seen any of that. We don't know anything that happened. And apparently it was Ahsoka that walked away from Sabine, not the other way around.
Which makes sense, I think, because I was thinking of this during that episode. I don't want to get too off track because I want to start from the beginning, because there was a crawl, guys. There was a crawl, and we have to get to that, and I want to start from the beginning. But going back real quick with what you said, that doesn't surprise me, because watching these 2 episodes, we knew Sabine is kind of a moody teenager when we last saw her, right? And maybe she's not even a teenager, but like she's definitely moody, and she has obviously grown, and especially live action, transferring from animation to live action, there's obviously a little bit of wiggle room. She has grown as a character, but what I realized also, like we talked about with Ahsoka kind of being that more Gandalf the White, kind of that more stoic person, I think she's almost turning into an Anakin Skywalker type character, where she is so consumed by doing the right thing that she is losing kind of track of her friends, and then doing the thing with more heart, I guess. I don't know if that makes a total sense. And I feel like her and Anakin are almost this like opposite sides of the same coin. I know I've used that phrase before, but that's something I was thinking, is that they almost are both getting consumed by different things, right? I think she's almost following in step with Anakin. Anyway.
I disagree a little bit with what you said about her being consumed by doing the right thing, because I like what they hinted at the beginning when they asked how she found out about this map from Morgan Elsbeth, when Ahsoka was talking to Hu Yang, and Ahsoka said, oh my gosh, what did she say? She said, I didn't follow Jedi protocol or something like that.
That's
true. Because Hu Yang made that line about how he's just following his programming and classic Jedi protocol, and she was like, the order is gone. And then she later says, when Hu Yang says, well, how did you get this map? She says, well, I didn't follow Jedi protocol.
I know. I guess I don't mean like necessarily, but she's still doing, I think there's so many other things that are going on, like training Sabine or something, that like it might be a little hard, but I feel like she's doing the right thing in the fact that like she is following consistently what she thinks is right, versus like, again, I don't know, going in tandem and step with what with the Rebels crew and the people that are closest to her. I still feel like, I don't know, it's a little bit of a gray area, because as we all know, she is no Jedi, but she still feels like she follows this path. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic from what I would even want to talk about, to be honest. Luke, go on.
I thought that the I am no Jedi line was going to be kind of left by the wayside, and I thought that was kind of person that knows too much syndrome when people were talking about this show and they were like, oh, well, actually, Ahsoka's not a Jedi. But like, come on, she uses the Force and lightsabers. She's a Jedi. But the description for the show refers to her as former Jedi, and the opening crawl refers to her as former Jedi. They are not shying away from that story beat, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. Where did Hu Yang come from? He's just in the show. He's just with them. Sabine knew him. He's been around for a long time. I am blown away at how many questions they just hurled at me at 90 miles an hour right off the rip.
Well, you even said, I was just like, yes, he's in this show, but I didn't even question how he got there. I was like, yeah, because I think that's what the show is doing so well so far. They're introducing so many characters from Rebels and Clone Wars that are just like in here to be like, oh, live action. Yes, why? Of course, why wouldn't? Oh my God, Clancy Brown be in it? Like
Ryder Azadi.
Exactly. So like, why? Yeah, why? Like that didn't cross any of our minds. And it's like they're bringing in all these references, and I'm like, I think Filoni, like I can't even, I'm so excited. There's like a million things from just like the Star Wars itself, but then there's also like the behind the scenes stuff. But I'm like, they should put all their eggs in this basket. Like, I'm so glad that they didn't start off with Mandalorian, or that they didn't start off with Ahsoka, because I feel like they've learned for like 4 to 5 seasons now worth of content, live action Star Wars content, to get to this point. And I think they've like basically perfected it.
So let's talk about episode 1 before we get too far. A lot of stuff that we'd seen in trailers, Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati taking down that New Republic ship to free Morgan Elsbeth. We knew that was going to happen. Saw most of that in the trailer. Still loved it. I think after the first 2 episodes, Shane Hati and Baylan Skoll are my favorite parts of the show.
They are so
by far.
cool. Yes.
Every single scene with them is incredibly captivating.
I don't know about my favorite part, but I mean, we have 3 villains as well that are
so far
4 villains, including the Inquisitor. But we have 4 villains, and they all have different motivations, and we don't even know what the motivations are yet fully. We know they want to get Thrawn back, right? But they all have their each individual.
That's true. We were talking last week if Marok the Inquisitor was going to be like a one-off, one-fight villain. No, he's in the gang. He's there for the show.
They seem like a trio more than I thought it was going to be a duo, which is interesting. And going back to the motivations, like when they were breaking out Morgan Elsbeth, Baylan Skoll had that line saying like, well, you pay us well, or we're well paid, or something like that. So at first I was like, okay, they're just strictly in it for the money. They're mercenaries or whatever it is. And then later when they were looking at the map and Shin Hati asked her master, Baylan, what is in it for us if we find Thrawn? And he said power. Which is obviously the line from the trailer, but it was edited a little bit differently because the line of the trailer was what happens when Thrawn is found or whatever, and then he says power. But instead, the line was for some a new beginning, for others war, for us power.
So Thrawn was sent at the end of Rebels with Ezra and the Purrgil to a different galaxy. That's new information. That's something that's never been explored in Star Wars before once.
And then
it's blowing my mind.
Their device they're creating, right, is presumably going to be the connector between those 2 galaxies.
Yes, which is Eye of Sion, which is a sick name, and it looked really cool. It's using a Super Star Destroyer hyperspace engine.
Yes. Multiple.
I mean, it is like, this is the way to do Star Wars correctly. It feels, I can't even describe it, the feeling that I have right now, because I'm so excited, and I feel like there's a million
I know exactly
neutrons.
how to describe it, because they treat you like you are part of the universe. They don't like... Well, the example I'm going to use is when the guy in the Corellian shipyard, the leader guy, the manager, refers to it as an SSD and doesn't say Super Star Destroyer.
But we're like, oh, I know what that is.
I know. It's being part of the universe. Like, sure, that's probably what they would call it, but almost any other show would spell it out for the audience, and they didn't, because this show is expecting you to be part of this universe.
Yes, they're not expecting anything, and it's like, I can't describe this aspect, but it's like why people are divisive against the sequel trilogy. It's like kind of spoon-fed, and it's like rehashing some things where this is just completely new and completely different, and yet it feels like it's so ingrained in because of the animated shows, but yet live action, it just feels so new and so fresh. And I feel like it sits somewhere currently with the only 2 episodes. We still have 6 to go, but somewhere between Andor and Mandalorian, right? It's pulpier than Andor, but it's not nearly as kid-friendly or action-y as Mandalorian. And this is exactly what we've always been talking about wanting, especially Max and I. Like, I feel like this is exactly the show we want, where it's something that you can follow week to week, and it's not adventure, and it's like this overarching story, and it's tying into one of our favorite shows of all time, one of our favorite animated Star Wars shows. I'm just so excited about just
It's very hard to explain, but it feels like Star Wars done right. Because right off the bat, when I was reading the opening scroll, I had a split second of like, oh man, we're doing the map thing again. I was like
Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous. I was like, oh, what is it with the maps? But obviously, with the whole new galaxy being a big plot point, that's very important. But they just did it correctly. Like they did the map thing better than The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, where they had to find the coordinates and all that stuff. I feel like they're doing that first episode did Indiana Jones better than Indiana Jones does Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's not hiding its influence like Indiana Jones, right? Or maybe even Lord of the Rings, like with the Eye of whatever. Like it just feels like the Eye of Sauron, like right. That's
the Eye of Sion.
Yes, that's Sauron, Sion.
I don't see the similarity.
But that's what I'm saying. It's not hiding what it's influenced by, but I think it does it so well and creates. It's like Stranger Things. Stranger Things just rips off a million different shows and movies that you love, but it does it its own way, so it doesn't matter because it creates something new out of that. And that's exactly what this is doing. It's like this isn't necessarily new. Ahsoka Tano being Indiana Jones is very cool for 5 minutes. Yeah. But it doesn't matter that it's like quote unquote ripping off, right? It's just like taking that influence and then creating its own thing, which then becomes its own thing.
A lot of the hype for this show is coming from the creator, Dave Filoni, because Dave Filoni did Clone Wars and Rebels, which people obviously really like. And Dave Filoni himself is just very passionate about Star Wars and incredibly charismatic. And when you watch him talk about Star Wars, his love for Star Wars just exudes more so than I think any other Star Wars creator does. And I think that's definitely carrying over into the show. You can feel that passion and that love and respect that he has for that universe. And it feels like something that is finally being made for people like us, like the super fans, the people who watched all the animated shows, read all the books. This feels like something that they're saying, like they're throwing us a bone now. They're saying like, okay, this one's for you guys. Thanks for paying attention and for following along. Whereas it might not be the best jumping on point. And that's kind of what I was thinking about beforehand. And as I'm watching the first 2 episodes, I'm constantly thinking to myself, what does somebody who's just seeing Ahsoka for the first time think of this? Like, are they able to follow along? I think like the plot like makes sense. I think like anyone can follow along, but I think a lot of like the heart is missing because a lot of it is centered around Ezra. We have yet to see Ezra, but he's clearly the heart of the show, and I think that might be missed by a lot of people who haven't seen Rebels.
Yeah, but I also feel like we have breadcrumbs throughout Mandalorian, right? That's what I was going to say before, is that I feel like almost they were like, hey, we want to make a live action Ahsoka. Like Filoni was like, hey, I want to make a live action Ahsoka show, but they were like, but first, let's have an entry point, and that's Mandalorian. And now I feel like those were the breadcrumbs that led to this show. So not only the hardcore fans or the Rebels fans can watch it, but anybody could enjoy it. And that's what we were talking about when we first started this episode, is that it feels like an odd jumping on point, but it's going to make you... I want to go back and rewatch Rebels.
I want to rewatch everything. Principal among them, these 2 episodes of Ahsoka again. Yeah. The music. Yes. Let's talk about the music for a minute. Like there were multiple times when we were watching when we were like, oh, that's an iconic theme starting right now.
Yes, in the beginning, the piano, and then Kevin Kiner, we were talking about this off mic, is also, I think, an underrated Star Wars composer who also did Clone Wars and Rebels, and I think he's just fantastic. I think he's able to pull out a lot of emotion. The journey into the cluster is one of my favorite Star Wars themes, which is in Rebels. The thing that Kevin Kiner is able to do with his music specifically is to pull out emotions and how you're supposed to feel, right? When it's ominous, it was ominous, right? Mm-hmm. And when it was like heartfelt, you felt that emotion, and then I think there's already a million even iconic themes.
The rock music when you first saw Sabine, like I was like, it was like jarring, right? You're like listening to Star Wars awesome. Rock music, but at the same time you're like, you're like everyone's grinning ear to ear, like, oh, this slaps. This is sick.
You've never really heard that before, too. You know. Yeah, I loved it.
Which obviously is how the composer wanted. That was the emotion that he was trying to draw for us the first time that we see Sabine in live action, and it definitely works. So yeah, he's definitely a great composer, and I'm very excited just for the music.
And then one last thing about the music is that I feel like he is able to replicate John Williams, but doing his own thing, where I feel like a lot of composers in Star Wars, obviously, today are trying to do their own thing, and it works so well. I'm so glad they're doing that. But I think for this show, it just feels like classic Star Wars, like we were talking about.
Yeah, I agree. The music does have a classical Star Wars feel. There's so much that I want to talk about. Matt, you've said before that you worry that the Ahsoka show, similar to the Book of Boba Fett, is going to have a central character that we like be overshadowed by a bunch of other characters that get more development and are cooler than the main character. And I was worried that was happening while we were watching these first 2 episodes of Ahsoka until one of the last seasons with Ahsoka, when Marok pulls back his double-bladed lightsaber and she just shifts to the side barely. And it's like, okay, that right there is all the personality I need from Ahsoka for these first 2 episodes, and I am on board.
I 1000% agree. I was worried about in the first episode. I'm like, oh, Sabine is just way cooler than Ahsoka, which is fine, right? She's more stoic. It's just gonna happen. But man, were we proved wrong in that one scene? We're like, yeah, okay, we're back on. And now their dynamics gonna be great. Oh God.
We got to talk more about Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. So he's a former Jedi. Hu Yang recognized him by the design of his lightsaber, which is another instance of Dave Filoni or the powers that be taking an existing character, and the character's gimmick. Hu Yang is a lightsaber builder. He assisted every Jedi in the Order for, I want to say, Hu Yang said 500 years. I thought it was like thousands of years, but regardless, Hu Yang recognized Baylan Skoll based on the design of his lightsaber, which I love that fact. And he didn't recognize Shin Hati's lightsaber, presumably because she built it after the fall of the Clone Wars, and she's a relatively newer Force user based on her age and design also.
And real quick, building off that, he also recognized Ezra's lightsaber, which is interesting, when he was talking to Sabine, because he said, oh, you made some modifications of your own. And I want to point that out, because in the lead up to this, everyone was talking about Sabine's lightsaber, and they were saying there's like a big argument online if it was a new lightsaber, if that was just Ezra's lightsaber, and people are like, oh no, it's a little bit different, that's Sabine's lightsaber.
Turns out it's kind of split the difference.
Yeah. I know. I don't know what Ezra's lightsaber looks like well enough. Is it like how Rey's lightsaber just has that leather strap down the Skywalker saber, and it's Rey's lightsaber all of a sudden? Because I thought that was kind of lame in the sequel.
I thought that was really funny when Hu Yang spelled that out. It felt like somebody went back and edited that in just to be like, no, listen, guys.
It's Ezra's. That's the blaster as well, though, right? Is that Kanan's?
That was his first one. That was Ezra's first lightsaber. Yeah.
Real quick, I know, Luke, you're leading this episode, but can we just go back to the very beginning and the fact that we got a crawl? I feel like that is something that everyone has been trying to fray away from, right? I feel like when Rogue One came out, they're like, well, they can't do the crawl, like blah, 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 right? And since then, there's been this...
And then Solo basically did a crawl just without the crawling. And
yes, yes. Yeah. And I think this is another step in that direction, right? Where I feel like it's like, yeah, it was red text. It gives a Sithy overarching theme.
I know. I don't know how I feel about the crawl, and there's no way I'll be able to parse out my feelings just because I knew the details of this plot so well before going into it. Like when I read the crawl and it was like, oh, Grand Admiral Thrawn is making a return and Ahsoka's following clues to find him. I was like, my God, is that really like where we're starting this? Like we've known this for years. I can't believe
you've known this
needs to be spelled out. But yeah right. I know,
because there were a couple parts like that where, like I said, I keep kind of remaining conscious of that fact that some people are just now tuning in. And I turned to Matt at one point. I forget what they were saying, but I said like, okay, there's some exposition for you who are just now tuning in.
Yes. Oh yeah. I think the thing that gives me hope with the crawl is 2 things, and one of them is the fact that if just say this is going to be for 3 seasons, just say. It feels like 3 movies, basically, right? Every episode doesn't have a crawl. It's just the beginning of a story. Mm-hmm. And that means with the crawl, we're able to jump ahead in time, much like the original trilogy does as well. And that's something that I loved in the beginning of this. We saw the crawl. We saw a ship. It was like, yep, check, 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 Star Wars, Star Wars. And then it takes its time. Every scene that we saw was slow and like, we felt those spaces. You were in those, even though they were using presumably the volume as well with some practical. It didn't feel as rushed as Mandalorian, right? Like you felt like you were in those scenes, and those that in the beginning, it's like in the Indiana Jones scene intro with Ahsoka, it feels like it takes its time, and then we're able to jump into the middle of a scene, right? It felt like when you're on Hoth and you're like, I don't even understand what's going on right now, but you're just like thrown into it, and then you kind of discover as it's going along, and that's something that I love, which means I feel like, in season 2 of Ahsoka, if it's not a limited series, which I hope it's not, presumably there'll be another crawl, and then these will feel like basically the Stranger Things. This is the second time I brought up the show, but the way they look at the season is basically a movie that is 8 hours long, and then they break it into 1 hour sections 8 times. And I think that's kind of what this is. It's a big story, an 8-part story that is broken into 30 minutes to an hour sections. And I think it's the crawl is a perfect encapsulator and a wrapper to begin and end it with.
Yeah, I agree. I think bringing back the crawl is, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, it's classic Star Wars, and that's a lot of what this show is going for, and I think it's going to get a lot of praise for doing exactly that. Another thing I wanted to bring up, I mean, I obviously didn't like prepare a structure or anything. We just
hold
watched
on
this.
before you change topics, because we kind of got sidetracked. I do want to go back to Balin Skull and Shin Hati too, because I there's a lot of things I want to point
In
out.
an ideal world, we would spend the full hour talking about them.
They're great, and like even like the show like being a little bit slower and letting you breathe in the moment, like with pacing and everything like that. I feel like that's also true with the character development, because we're 2 episodes in and we still don't really know the full story of Balin and Shin, because we're like, are they bad or are they not? Like we keep talking about that. Like, are they going to have redemption arcs? Are they actually bad to begin with? And it's just really interesting.
They definitely slaughtered a ton of people in the New Republic in that opening scene.
They have that going against them. That is definitely
they're
true.
far from good, but I don't. But because their lightsabers are orange and they're not blood red,
Right.
which is
And
another
Dave
thing that Dave
Filoni-
Filoni's talked about before. That's an
Exactly.
intentional design choice.
And we know that Balin Skull is Shin Hati's master. And like you pointed out, Shin Hati even has a Padawan braid, which is something that the Jedi did.
Which he was a former Jedi, correct? So
Yeah, he was a former Jedi. He's
meant-
explicitly not a Jedi now.
Yeah.
But the Sith didn't do Padawan braids, so
I know.
I don't
he's
know what
breaking
he
that
is.
over.
Yeah.
But there's also very interesting at the very end of that last episode, episode 2, where he's like, "It'll be a shame to kill her because she's another Jedi, and there's so few of us left." And it ended on such. It didn't end on a weird note. It's just a weird thing where he says truth, and then the hologram goes away, and it's like, so he does have some sort of.
I think he definitely misses
internal
the
conflict.
Jedi. It's gonna
I
be.
know, it's so odd, and so that's why I'm interested in seeing is. That's why I feel like is she going to eventually kill her master because he is going to actually kind of waver and show that he isn't fully bad like she is, right? Like
I
this
don't know.
is also
There's so many possibilities.
and we've never seen a Sith and Padawan in live action like that duo, right? Like usually there's a big bad guy, Darth Vader, and there's some side people, right? And then same thing in Phantom Menace. There's Darth Maul, and then there's some side people kind of that are villains. And this is like a group of villains that we've never really had in Star Wars before, which is enthralling, because I'm just like, any of these could be the main bad guy. This could be a fake out. Ray Stevenson's character could get killed off in 4 episodes, right? We have no idea at all. Morgan could get killed right when Thrawn comes back.
I know. I don't think she will be, because I thought Morgan Elsbeth was just going to be kind of a plot device to find Thrawn, and then she gets exposited that she's a Night Sister and a witch.
Which is some of the coolest
Yeah.
episodes. And the temple that Ahsoka goes in the beginning is super freaky. And then obviously those episodes are so scary with the witches, like actually scary.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons too that it feels so much like Star Wars is because we're seeing so many different characters. This is definitely an ensemble show as opposed to Mandalorian or something like that, and I absolutely love that. Like, just in 2 episodes, I can already say that Hera, Chopper, and Hu Yang have been in the show significantly more than I thought they would.
Same. My one worry was Hera's going to be pure exposition. Because in the first episode, she's a lot of the conduit between Sabine and Ahsoka. And then in episode 2, it instantly went out the window. And so I think
Yeah, she started to become that heart. She's coming back into that character she was in Rebels, where
Yes.
she was like the mother of the crew, basically.
And Hera is, I've said this before, is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. It's definitely like my top 3. Definitely my favorite character in the show Rebels as well, even though Kanan is my favorite Jedi. But it's so good, and I was worried about that, but they're using the characters in a really smart way, where sure, she was maybe the conduit, the plot device between those 2 characters, and now they're moving on from that. She's not going to stay in that role, hopefully, but she's already kind of gone out of it in the second episode.
Yeah,
It's great.
As soon as she had that one-on-one with Sabine, where she was like, "Hey, you did good," and Sabine said, "Well, tell that to Ahsoka," and she said, "Well, you're the one who needs to hear it right now." That kind of motherly moment made me very happy, and that was like the moment where I agree. I thought like Hera was just going to be like a plot device, basically, and that was when it kind of changed. And I was like, nope, she's her own character, and she's like actually like there to support these people, and she actually still has that love and. Like I said, that kind of mothering nature about her, which I absolutely love. One thing I wanted to bring up real quick just before I forget was the ending of episode 1. I'm very glad that they released the first 2 episodes together. I was confident that we were going to open up on Ahsoka force healing Sabine. And I was just going to be like, okay, yeah, like we know that's a thing now, so, she can do that. That makes sense. But I'm really glad that they didn't.
Yeah, same.
Because they kind of like let that power be like a significant power, like not to be overused or anything like that. Instead, she just wakes up in a medical bay or wherever, and I really like that.
I also feel like this is one of the first times that we were able to see a lightsaber battle in like a significant lightsaber battle in a city around medical equipment. Usually, I feel like they're pretty far out somewhere else.
I thought the exact same thing. I was like, how come she survives that? And then I'm like, well, I guess like Qui-Gon Jinn was all the way in the middle of that planet or whatever. I don't know where he was on Naboo when that happened. But I was like, yeah, it would have taken a while to get him some medical attention.
Yes, exactly. That's what the show is doing so well, is that it's grounding in and using these locations that we've seen before as well. And then not only that, but I feel like the show has so much mystery to it still. We were 2 episodes in, 6 left, and I'm still like, oh man, I don't know. Like,
I know.
there's so much.
Do you think we're going to this other galaxy, or we're just bringing Thrawn and Ezra back from this other galaxy?
No, I think we're going.
I think we're going, and I think it's...
Might not spend too much time
Here's
there,
the thing.
but
We're
definitely going.
Do you think this is not... I don't know how to bring this up without side railing the entire thing. Do you think the other galaxy is the sequel trilogy? I know some people want to keep those separate, and I don't think so. I don't think so either. I'm just saying, do you think that's at all a possibility in the fact that it can be like there's 2 worlds, and then the sequel trilogy lives somewhere else?
That's not what another galaxy is, though. That would be a multiverse. That would be another universe, because it would have to have the same characters in that other galaxy.
I don't think they're doing that either. But that's just something that I know a lot of
They'll
people
definitely not do it while they're still under Disney. I mean.
No, they'll never do that. One theme that I saw that I think is going to go forward into the whole series. Obviously, we're 2 episodes in, so I don't really know. But the theme of surviving, because that's how the first episode ended with Sabine, and Morgan Elsbeth talks about how she's a survivor, and I think the main character arc for Ahsoka is going to be her dealing with the trauma and surviving the Clone Wars, mirrored by Baylan Skoll's trauma and surviving this Clone Wars, which we have no idea how he did survive it. All we know is that Hu Yang said he disappeared shortly after the Clone Wars, which I would imagine is a presumed death, as with all Jedi. But we have no idea what it's going to be, and I think it's going to really affect Ahsoka, and I think that's where the primary source of her character development is going to come from, which I'm really excited to see Ahsoka's character development, because we were talking about last week how Rosario Dawson plays the character very reserved and kind of not heavenly, but you know what I mean.
Gandalf the White.
Yeah, very, very Gandalf the White, but I don't
very straight, very stoic.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to really develop a character and have like a sufficient arc if you're starting there.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go. We talked about if she was going to keep playing the role that way. She definitely is so far. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to change. I doubt it, but I think they could still make it work with relation to Baylan Skoll's character arc.
I agree. I also think that I'm excited to move past her character arc, because her entire character arc has been Anakin. She's living in the shadow of that, right? The entire time. Now that she is a master and she has a Padawan, we're able to finally move on from it. There's going to be parallels, so she's never going to fully escape it. But you're right. I think that is a hard place to start from.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about Ahsoka without Anakin, because her character really is consumed by his shadow. Yeah, exactly. I'm excited to see what she's like without it.
Yeah, 1,000%. There's also
real quick though, before we leave this theme of surviving, I want to tie that into the last episode that we just released, our Ahsoka theories and predictions episode, because in it we made some predictions, some of which have already come to fruition. I said that the second episode was going to end with that haircutting scene and Sabine and Ahsoka teaming up together.
I wanted to talk about that. You said that haircutting scene last week was very reminiscent of Kanan's haircutting scene, and at the time I was thinking in my head, like, okay, that's just he's cutting hair and they use a knife. Like, how different could it be? But no, thematically and visually, that was very, very similar. Sabine is having the exact same character moment that Kanan had then.
Yeah, it was very similar to that. And I just want to renew another one of my predictions. I said it when we were watching the show, and I think Matt kind of chuckled. I think Ezra's dead. I don't know. I think he's a survivor.
I still think that is just as laughable as I did last week.
I think Thrawn is a survivor. I think they're going to go out and they're going to find him and they're going to get him. Maybe they save Ezra with the world between worlds. Who knows? But
that's right. You brought me in last week also with the world between worlds.
Yeah. So who knows? Because what we know is that at the end of Rebels, Ezra and Thrawn were taken into hyperspace by those Purgils, and apparently were taken all the way into an entire separate galaxy. What happened once they got wherever?
Talk about a comedy of errors.
They did not just go their own ways.
Tell me they're not just like on an island somewhere and having to cohabitate and be friends. Oh my god, what if Ezra's turned? That could be a whole other thing.
We get a Gilligan's Isle slapstick comedy of just Thrawn and
that's all Ezra. I want. But I feel like there's Max, if you're the creator of a show and you're bringing it to live action, are you telling me you're not going to have the main character of that animated show be in live action?
No, he might be in it, but I think they might save him with the World Between Worlds or something. I don't know. They're making a big deal about this. No one's thinking about that. Let's talk about it. What do you think happened
With the World Between Worlds, or where Thrawn and Ezra went?
No, where Thrawn and Ezra went.
They went to
Because
this new
clearly-
galaxy. I don't know, and they've been there for a
Thrawn
long
was
time.
able to get a message
Yes.
back to this galaxy because he made a map to him. I mean, somehow they know how and to find him.
My guess off the rip is Thrawn and Ezra worked together in this other galaxy to send a message back together. And I
That's
think
what
they
I'm
even
saying.
Ezra
I
would
think
not want that. Ezra did this whole thing to get Thrawn
Him
out of
away.
the picture.
Yeah, I agree.
He would never want to do
Well,
that.
here's the thing: the thing that we're alluding that we're not paying attention to is that they also said they don't understand how space and time works out there. So it's completely different. They could be gone for 30 seconds. Is all
They
we know.
did drop that
Yeah.
phrase,
Yes.
space and time, which
Exactly.
would hint at the World Between Worlds.
Exactly. And so I think they can be gone for 30 seconds. They would have no idea, right? Or they would. I mean, obviously they sent a message. It'll be a little bit significantly longer, but I don't know. I'm very interested.
Oh, so you're saying like it could be like some interstellar stuff
Yes,
where they find them and maybe only a day has passed or
Yes,
something.
correct. I think so. And that'd be odd because I guess the aging thing would be weird. But either way, I don't
have
know.
they
I'm
aged? They
very
might not have.
excited.
We don't know
I
if they did or not.
Oh, man. I'm excited. I think we'll see obviously Ezra for sure. I'm just excited to see the Ghost crew back together as much as we can get them back together. And I hope Zeb is in it at some point. I don't know what he's doing.
I think that itch has already been scratched for me. Zeb, we saw him in The Mandalorian, and I don't.
That was
I
the
don't, I'm not.
breadcrumb.
I'm not
I want
craving
the-
him as much in this show
I want
as
the
I think
full
you
loaf.
are.
I want the full loaf still. We got a crumb. Give me it.
I think we'll see him at some point, but
Yeah.
it'll be minimal.
I think I don't know. I just am so happy for Dave Filoni, and I'm so
know.
happy
I
for
keep
us as
thinking
Star
about that
Wars
too.
fans who are just able to like live with this show and like kind of not. I've never expected a live action version of these characters, and it's paying off, and it's like nice being like you were saying, Max. I'm like just being dedicated to the fan, like, being a dedicated fan, and seeing this kind of pay off. It's just like, man, like what a great day to be a Star Wars fan.
I know. It reminds me of when Katie Sackhoff joined The Mandalorian in
Yes.
season 2 as
Yeah.
Bo-Katan. In an interview, Dave Filoni was talking about when they hired her back in the Clone Wars, and he was like, we're going to model the character after you, and who knows, maybe one day you could play her in live action. And they chuckled about it, like, yeah, right. And then that happened, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I like to think Dave Filoni was saying then, like, you know what? We're going to do it with everyone next.
Yeah, I've built a machine and I cannot stop it, which is good. And also, just another thing. Not one last thing. Let's keep going. Another thing is the episode lengths. The first episode was almost an hour, and the second episode was in the 40 minutes. Perfect timing. Like,
I agree.
like-
it could have been shorter. Like I feel like we're talking about so much about how like the pacing is like kind of slower, but like we really like that fact. I feel like if they wanted to, they probably could edit it to be a little bit faster
Snappier.
paced and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Why
I don't want
they
it.
don't? I like living in the
Yes.
in the world.
I would have been okay with it being a little bit shorter. I definitely got the TikTok brain rot where my
Oh,
attention
no.
span only lasts about 1 minute.
LT.
It was most noticeable in the Indiana Jones part in the beginning of the first episode
Oh,
when
my-
Ahsoka was moving rocks, and it was like she went to
that
the
was so
third
cool.
one and moved it a little bit more, and I was like, oh my god,
the rule of 3.
I know.
Oh no, I loved it. I need it.
After all that, then Sabine decoded the key or whatever, and it was just turning the thing like a Rubik's Cube. Like, Ahsoka, you were just doing this on the planet. You were
Again,
turning the thing. You didn't try.
She's too godly. She doesn't have time for that. You got to give it to Sabine.
But she didn't know that the key though. I mean, there's a million different combinations, and
Is that
the
it?
key was
she,
on the floor.
You think she was solving like a Rubik's Cube on the way to Lothal and was like, I cannot figure this out?
I think Hera is super rad.
I think Hera looks interesting because they gave her the blue eyes, and it looks jarring. Like Ahsoka has blue eyes also, which are also lenses, because I'm sure Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Hera, doesn't actually have blue eyes, and Rosario Dawson doesn't have blue eyes. But Hera's look very striking. Do you guys notice that?
I think they're pretty striking in the show as well, though. I think it's that contrast.
No, that's what I'm talking about. The show. Oh, you mean in Rebels?
Yes, sorry, in Rebels. I think it's the blue is very contrasting to the green. I feel like it's a character defining thing. With that being said, it's a little different in live action because they're become piercing versus standing out a little bit. So I get what you mean.
I have nothing bad to say about the visuals.
No,
I think it looks absolutely
I'm not
incredible.
saying it was bad. I'm
I
just
think
saying it
it's
was
very
interesting.
cinematic. The entire thing looks
Yep.
like it's a
And
movie.
then beyond the visuals, it's just the costuming is so good. Like when Sabine is in just trying to figure that out, she's like in her like casual clothes is basically just without her jacket. But it's like that feels like real life. And then beyond that, like Hera has like this cool costume. I think the costuming is super cool. I mean, the whole set is super rad. I mean, it's just like every little detail seems to be thought out. And it's like I'm okay with
Ahsoka holding a cup.
That's what I was gonna go on to as well, because like Luke pointed this out. She's just feeding her cat. Like it's just like we're getting time to be able to understand, and then everything has a purpose, right? The cat is then the purpose is to basically still standing outside, which means Ahsoka understands that something is bad going on inside, so she's prepared for that droid to drop down, and she's able to kill
I didn't
it.
even make that connection. The dog or the cat was outside.
Exactly, and so every little thing has right. If the cat was important, she wouldn't have fed it, and so it's just like every little detail so far has played off, and I'm so excited to see what we're missing already, or what we already missed. You know what I mean? Like the three of us are talking, and you're finding out things that like I caught. I'm sure if you mentioned some other stuff, I'll be like, oh my god, yeah, that's totally true. I think that's what the show's doing so well already, and it's like I'm okay with Mandalorian season 3 being not as up to par as how I would have liked it to be, because this is just better than anything I could have even imagined in Mandalorian, to be honest.
Lightsaber fights,
Oh,
all a 10 out of 10, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the oh my god, the Sabine fight is perfect because she's out of she's not trained, right? She's let it go for a little bit, and I think some of it is clear, and she's facing a
how
Padawan.
much training did she get? Even if she was at the peak of her powers, would she have fared much better?
I know.
I'm so curious to learn more.
Well, quick, you just said the peak of her powers, and I want to point out that notable line from Hu Yang where he said that your apt with the Force, or your aptitude with the Force, or whatever, is far below every other Jedi Padawan that I've ever seen.
Which plays into my fan theory that I've maintained for a long time, that midi-chlorians are not real and they were fabricated by the High Jedi Council to dominate the power of the Force and monopolize it, essentially, and
Gatekeep the Force.
convince the galaxy that they couldn't wield it.
Oh man, we got like an X-Files like Smoking Man conspiracy going on. I love this. I've not heard this theory at all, Luke.
I know, I've never talked about it because in The Mandalorian they talk about the M count and how it's an important part of the cloning process.
Oh
and
man,
that's why they wanted Grogu.
I want a whole episode on that.
I like where it's going though, but that it's, even if you have a low midi-chlorian count, it's not unavailable to you. It's just harder.
Yeah, man, I love that theory. Can we also talk about the Ahsoka exhales and the plethora of them? Like
it was in episode 2. I believe her first 3 lines were all deep sighs.
yes, well, she's like, I lost the thing. I unlocked the map, and she goes. Like it literally was the equivalent of I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. But then she does like 3 other times, and it is very funny.
Yeah. She makes her dissatisfaction with Sabine very known.
Yes.
Which is fair. I mean, she said, like, oh, hey, can I take this? No, I think it's best that it stays here. Okay, great. And then she takes it. And it's like, we were kind of joking about that because it's like, obviously she was going to do that.
Yeah.
And then
Ahsoka had to have
Ahsoka
known.
is just basically being passive aggressive. Like, I told you not to do that.
Yep.
I know. And she's even complaining to Hera about it. She's like, oh, she took the key when I explicitly told her not to. And it's like, Ahsoka, have you met Sabine? Like, what are you expecting?
Yeah, Hera kind of pointed that out to her. Yeah.
Which is why Hera's the best. And she's a mom.
But
where's Jason at?
I'm very interested to see if Sabine is Force sensitive or not, because again, going back to our theories and predictions episode, we were talking about whether or not Sabine would be Force sensitive. Obviously, I think a lot of people on the internet took this position that, oh, she's not Force sensitive, she's just being trained in like lightsaber combat and like that kind of side of like being a Jedi and stuff. And I thought that was incorrect. I thought people were setting themselves up to be disappointed. And who knows? She might still be, but I think that line from Hu Yang,
it kind of null and voids that argument that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The only thing that I'm thinking that this is my last note actually written down, is the reason I do think she's Force sensitive, whether it's her or whether it's Ezra doing this and trying to communicate with her, is that Luke and I both notice this, and is that in a lot of scenes there is a shimmering around Sabine when she's trying to focus. When she's looking down at the knife, there's shimmering. When she is outside about to have the lightsaber battle, there's a shimmering. There's a lot of shimmering around. It almost looks like when you're in when it's extremely hot outside, you're looking down a road and it looks like there's waves, and it looks like almost like a heat shimmer. So I don't know if that's like the Force. I don't know if that's Ezra trying to communicate with her between space and time. I don't exactly know what that is, but I think that is a huge key.
Going back to Interstellar, you think Ezra's banging
Make him
on
stay,
the bookcase on the other side?
not that intense. I hope, because that's Interstellar is too sad for me to rewatch all the time. It's too sad.
Some more notes that I had. Matt and I were talking during the episode that they keep showing up in the Phantom. Why would you ever leave the Ghost if you have the Ghost? I have a new theory that Jason's on the Ghost. And Hera's like, okay, Jason, you stay here. Chopper and I are taking the Phantom.
That could be.
Which is exciting because do they have a home? Do they live on the Ghost?
I know.
Which brings me to the next point. The canon of it all in the books and comics and The Mandalorian to an extent, there is significant demilitarization of the New Republic after the Galactic Civil War. We're not seeing any of that. Max, I know you're reading Alphabet Squadron right now. I know you haven't finished it, so I won't spoil anything. But
thank you.
When does this take place in relation to that? Because Hera's in Alphabet Squadron, and she talks about how she really wants to be done fighting when she's done with the war. And it looks like this is definitely post-war, but she's still the general. I don't know. They're not shutting the door on any of these stories, but they're not really walking through them like I thought they were going to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. In my lead up to Ahsoka, I watched like a couple recap videos, and one of them mentioned the demilitarization, and they said it was like 90% decommissioned or whatever. So there is still some sort of like a defensive force or something, but it's just like a fraction of what it was.
Yeah, like I said, they're not shutting the door on any of those stories, but I did not think it lined up as neatly as it could have.
Yeah. There's something about the show that I also really like, that there's an inherent sadness to me watching it where these characters, and we watched literally the beginning and ending of these characters' stories in Rebels where they're together and they're living together and they spend every day together. And in my mind, it's kind of like college a little bit, right? You're with these people all day, every day for 4 years. And then at some point, you unfortunately have to grow up and get on kind of with your life, right? And then you kind of all separate. And hopefully at some point, you kind of come back together, which is exactly what these characters are doing now. And it's weird to be like, so much time has passed for these characters that were so used to being super close and living together, literally living together, and now it's like they're just grown up, and it's like where do these relationships kind of go from here? And that's just like a dynamic thing that I really enjoy exploring in any media content that I am able to consume, but like especially in Star Wars, we've never had this close of a group in Star Wars for this long. Obviously like Luke and Leia and Han, but like even then it wasn't the amount of time that we spent with these characters, and then to see them kind of grow up and go on is really interesting, and also just kind of inherently sad, and seeing them kind of find their way back to each other.
Another note I had is Senator Jai Carell, which is Ryder Azadi introduced him. I wanted to look it up. I left my phone on the other side of the room, and I didn't want to get up. And we just rewatched it, or we just watched the show for the first time, and so I didn't do any research or anything. I believe Jai Carell was with Ezra when they infiltrated the Imperial Academy on Lothal. You remember that episode?
I do remember that. Yes, because the name sounds super familiar. I'm 90% sure you were correct.
Yeah, because it was voiced, I believe, if I'm thinking of the same character, by Dante Bosco, who voiced Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. Well, Iroh and Legend, regardless. But I remember that actor and I remember that character because of it, and that's such a cool tie-in. He was such a minor character, but there are children's books, and to an extent, Rebels is a children's show, and all the books I read are children's books. But this one is like actually like first graders like learn words, and it's about
Jedi.
And but it's about one or more of those characters from that infiltrating the Imperial Academy on Lothal arc, and I always thought that was odd that they never really went back to them. But it's great to see that he grew up and became a senator. If I'm correct in any of this, if it's not, I'll fact check this after we stop recording and maybe cut all of this. But I'm pretty sure I'm correct.
We just stopped watching it. We're just hopping in and giving an immediate reaction.
Off the rip, I liked that moment.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm so excited to see what's next. I'm ecstatic to see what the next 6 weeks are. Well, hold. I think obviously
I can't believe we only have 6 more weeks.
I know it's a bit of a bummer, but man, I'm really hoping it's going to be another season, and obviously these shows are kind of intertwining with each other. We know we get Bo-Katan in the show. We know we get Mon Mothma. So we have so much more to go and tie-ins within the universe that they're building now. And I'm excited to see. I hope this is kind of the more direction that they're going in. Again, it's a little bit more serious than Mandalorian. It's a little less serious than Andor. It's the sweet spot right now. And it's like, this is great Star Wars. I'm very excited to see what happens next. I'm so excited for the next 6 weeks to watch it with you guys and talk about it over at Luke Taylor's house. And then, I don't know. I'm thrilled. I think after those, we have to do an episode as well, just recapping it all. Not necessarily recapping what happens, but just like our overall thoughts and, looking back into our TV shows rank, because I have a feeling this is going to significantly change our rankings.
Yeah, it's definitely going to sneak its way into the top half at least. Does anyone have any final thoughts that they want to leave off with these 2 episodes? For me, it's just going to be Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll. They were the MVPs of the premiere for me, and I cannot wait to see where they go.
Yeah, I just love, speaking of Baylan, I think one of the coolest lines in the show so far was, you speak of dreams, vague and fractured hope, which is a great quote, I think.
I saw you write that down because I didn't write that down because I knew you were going to bring it up because I was like, oh, I want to remember that.
I was writing a couple lines down for the intro. that was one. That was going to be one of them was going to work in. So there's a couple, but yeah, I agree. I'm so excited to see what happens next. Maxwell?
I can't think of anything specific. I'm trying to think of anything to say. I all of it. I don't know. The Eye of Sion. I want to see him go into this new galaxy. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
I wanted to mention that because the Eye of Sion just reminded me of the High Republic, because the High Republic every now and again will mention something super cool sounding like that and then not go into detail at all. And I love that kind of world building. And it happened with the Eye of Sion.
All right, everybody, we're so excited. I assume nobody has any force for thought because we're just kind of coming hot off the tails of watching it.
I do have some force for thought, actually.
Well, now I look like an idiot. Go on.
It is not Ahsoka related, unfortunately. But I was watching Andor recently, and it was the Aldhani heist, and it was the scene where the Commandant sees Lieutenant Gorn for the first time after the heist started, and he realizes he was in on it, and he says, "You'll hang for this." And Gorn says, "After 7 years serving you, I deserve far worse."
Yeah.
And it's a great moment. But it made me think on a rewatch, or by my 3rd or 4th rewatch, does the Empire really hang people? Seems kind of low tech and barbaric, doesn't it?
Luke, let's get into an episode and one of my Rogue Ones, because I really do want to discuss this. There's a lot of things like that. I'm just like, yeah, I think they would hang somebody like that, right? For the fact of a warning to the other people,
to make
right?
it public.
I mean, obviously that's kind of what those are for. So I feel like it's not past. I don't think it's below them. I think exactly that you said it's barbaric. So I think it is.
Execution certainly, but yeah, a literal hanging.
Yeah,
I think it's more of a turn of phrase.
No,
like,
I think
you'll be killed for this.
See, if you're doing an execution, you have the option to go. You don't have to see it. Hanging, you got to walk past that. If you're going to the grocery store or something, a good placement.
I have another force for thought from the Ahsoka show.
Yes.
Ahsoka said that she was bullish at one point.
Yes.
Does that imply bulls exist in the Star Wars galaxy? They act similarly to bulls in our galaxy?
Yeah, Loth bulls. We have Loth cats, Loth wolves.
Wouldn't it be crazy if it was actually the 1986 Chicago Bulls? Michael Jordan's there, or 1996 or whatever, Chicago Bulls.
All right. Well, that's my official force for thought, is that Ahsoka has confirmed that bulls exist in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Sweet. Well, everybody, we're very excited. I hope you're equally as excited. We're also releasing this episode a whole day early because we're so excited, and because we are recording directly after we are watching this. So yeah, from now on to the next 6 weeks, we'll also be releasing episodes on Wednesdays, which is coming to a surprise to us as well. After they announced less than a week ago this was happening.
I know what you're thinking. Why would you release all your episodes on Thursdays, Force for Thought, if you're just going to move them to Wednesdays? Well, when we started this podcast 4 months ago, we looked at when Ahsoka was going to start releasing, and it was like on Wednesdays, and we were like, you know what? If we did our episodes on Thursdays, then 4 months from now, we could have our episode come out the day after Ahsoka, and it'll be perfect.
I forgot about that. We did specifically have this in mind when we were scheduling all of these.
I'm going to be so pissed when it goes back and Skeleton Crew is on Thursdays, or it's going to be on like a Friday. Like, oh... It's going to be so weird. But
I my routine.
I know. I completely forgot about that. So hopefully we are going to stick to the Thursday schedules. But we are going to be, obviously, for the next 6 weeks, at least on Wednesdays. And you know what, Skeleton Crew? We probably won't know until the week before. Just like this show. Which, real quick, last thing. I know we did a Force for Thought. And we're probably running a little long.
We did 2 Force for Thoughts.
But...
So this better be good.
They did take our advice. I'm going to hang our hats on that and say it took our advice. But something that we suggested in this, obviously it's not just us, but they actually did it. They made an event out of it. And I'm so excited. When we sat down to watch Ahsoka, we knew nothing about it. Nobody has seen this show besides people, a select few people, right, have seen it. The general public has not.
Yeah.
In the same amount, it's a scheduled time, and it's slightly inconvenient because it's a Wednesday. It should be like a Sunday thing. I feel like kind of Game of Thrones, but it's a step in the right direction, and I cannot believe they actually did it. It was way late and a super weird choice to do, but I'm so excited they did it.
I agree. It gave us time. I made Ahsoka themed cupcakes. We were able to have a little party.
They
we
were
got
delicious.
Burger King. Not to mention, I just lost my train of thought again. Max?
Well, it's getting pretty late because we just watched this, and obviously it didn't come out until 9 o'clock our time because we're Eastern. But let us know what you think. Reach out to us on all the social medias. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, the website formerly known as Twitter, Threads. We're also there too. I'm once again assured that we are
I'm sorry.
highly
I can't
active on
keep
Threads.
living this lie. I have not opened Threads since I downloaded it. We're not on Threads. Stop looking for us on Threads.
That's the only reason this podcast hasn't blown up yet. Everyone's looking for us on
Man.
Threads.
Also, speaking of East Coast, guess what state we're in? You know? I'm interested in everybody can guess what state we're in. I don't think we ever said.
Based on our accents alone.
Yeah, based on our accents alone. We're all from the general area, same area. Anyway, that's all. What are you laughing at?
I'm trying to think of a quick accent to do.
Don't do it. Do your Jersey.
Crikey. Well,
Not even a U.S. accent.
When in doubt,
Just
go where when.
Just Crocodile Dundee. All right.
but yeah, let us know. Reach out to us. If wherever you're listening to us, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a rating, whatever it is you can do wherever you're listening to us. It really helps us out a lot.
I boarded the train of thought that I was derailed from earlier. We were talking about how we're so glad
Choo-choo.
Yes, we were talking about how we're so glad that they got a formal release time, because the plan originally was for us to just wait all day Wednesday and then watch it together. There was no chance I was going to wait all day Wednesday without watching it.
How much
I
better?
was going to watch it as soon as I woke up and pretend I did it.
How
I
much?
hate that so much about you.
How much better was it experiencing it together? It was so good.
It was great.
And you would have missed that experience. You would have had to
I
lie
would've.
through it the
I
entire
would've.
time.
Yes, like I said before, I got the TikTok brain rot. I need instant gratification. As soon as it's out, I will be watching it.
Oh, man, I gotta take a deeper dive into your psyche.
Yeah, maybe
So interested.
maybe next time we'll do like a 5 or 10 minute meditation after the episode before we hit record, because I would love some time to gather my thoughts.
Well, no more episodes in a blog, right? So
That's true.
We can take 10 minutes.
Yeah.
A little bathroom
Sounds
break.
good. Well,
All right. Thanks for
stay
listening.
tuned.
All
See
right.
you next week.
See you, Sammy.